Well, hello, good people. Mark Holmes here, and as always, I appreciate each and every one of you guys watching, commenting, subscribing, and being part of Joe Boo's day job. I have here, we're sitting here, actually laying here on the floor at the Red Brick House, which is a 205-year-old historic house that we are working on getting put onto the National Registry. And about 8 years ago, the city was actually going to tear this down because they owned it and it had just too much work that needed to be done to it to save it. And at the time, they didn't have the funds to save it, and it wasn't part of the historic district and things like that. They tried to turn it over to a group of people that were trying to save it, but unfortunately, they didn't have the skills and the money to go ahead and do that. Enter me and my wife and trying to save this. And they always say, be careful what you wish for because you might just get it. And we got the house. We spent 6 years on getting the house rezoned from highway commercial to local business, so that way we could actually get building permits and turn it into a home or a small business. And we have finally gotten all this together, and the place I think looks really, really good. I saw this morning a post in our old house, which is a Facebook group that's got hundreds of thousands of people, I think, that are in it. And people will post questions about their house and things that they find and so on. Well, I've posted quite a few comments and things and pictures from this house as we had to do a complete rebuild of this house and trying to keep and restore as much of it as original as possible. For example, the windows, the 2/2s that have window weights, I had to rebuild a lot of the sashes on there, the bottom parts of it, but keeping the wood that was still good on there and using the window weights. Now they leach a little bit of air in the wintertime, but I wanted to keep those things the same. And of course, building actually working wooden shutters out of antique heart pine. And so I've learned a lot about the house and the way they built things and so on. And so the question she had was, she was looking at her molding and said it's very, very cold. They've had the house for 4 years. And she's noticing that the molding where it was caulked has come apart. And she was wondering, is this a problem? Well, typically, when you have an older house that's like this, it is like a living and breathing thing. The wood is going to move and change. It'll expand and it'll contract. I have, to give a great example, I took wood, okay, cut a piece of wood in half, and I glued those up, and then I cut them basically in pie wedges. So it's like looking like a pizza. So you've got the grain all meets at the middle of all of these pieces. What happens every spring with this is it develops a little crack and it comes apart and sets off. And then magically it goes back together and I can't find the crack. And then the next spring it opens up again and then goes back in, because wood expands and contracts. And now it makes so much sense that the flooring I'm looking at right here, and this is why I'm laying on the floor, is tongue and groove. All of these floorboards, which are from 205 years ago, are tongue and grooved. And the reason they made them tongue and groove is because they do expand and contract. And when they do, like right now, I've got about a 1/4-inch gap right here that wasn't here this summer with the heat and humidity. Now, I believe part of the reason why it is expanding and contracting like it does and why it's open now more than it has been, more than last winter. Last winter, we have brick walls with lime plaster. The great thing about lime plaster is it literally is breathing and it sucks out the moisture. And you very rarely will see mold growing on plaster. It's one of the reasons why they use plaster walls in like swimming pools. You almost have like this crisp scent that's in there, and it's constantly curing, because basically when you do lime plaster, it's sand, or an aggregate, and it's the lime crushed stone that's been basically cooked, it's converting back into stone, and it needs that moisture to help cure. So what you have is, and my skin gets very, very dry in the house. Last year, to help our plants and things, we had a humidifier on. And, we had it set up here so it's constantly putting more moisture in the air, which of course helps with the wood, because what's happening is the wood is getting the moisture and stuff sucked out of it, and so it's shrinking. But we're okay because it's tongue and groove, that you're not seeing the space up underneath of it or seeing the back of the drywall and the ceiling below it. And so these are the things that you learn with an old house. Another example of when you'll notice with, say, plaster, when you end up putting plaster on walls, sometimes it cracks, and then the cracks will disappear. Again, same thing. It's the moisture in it curing. And so when you have an old house, and this is key here, and this is why I've learned you can't do some modern things with an old house. For example, I had a person who came back at me and said, "You're an idiot." But when I say soft brick, well, I'm talking about hand-fired bricks that were made 200 years ago, Williamsburg bricks. They're totally different than the bricks that you buy commercially now. Those bricks that you buy now are really literally rock hard, whereas the old bricks are a little inconsistent, and you can see the aggregates and stones and stuff that are in there, and they break a lot easier. But these bricks also absorb a lot of moisture and expand and contract in the wintertime. If you use regular bricks and mortar with those, generally speaking, it's going to crack because they're not moving at the same rate together. And these are things that you will find out with an old house. You're going to get some noise, some cracking. The floors may creak at one point of the year when the moisture and stuff is different between the summer and the winter. And then it doesn't later on, and then it'll start creaking. And I've got that effect that's actually happening downstairs. There's a couple places where now the floorboards have a little creak that they didn't have before, and then it disappears. All completely 100% natural with the floor. And mind you, these are the original floorboards that were in here. They had been painted and had linoleum and then carpet on top of them. We ended up taking off all the linoleum, the carpet, and everything with this. And it took a long time to sand this to get the boards pretty much flat and even again, because they were kind of roughly cut. But the beauty and the color in this is just literally amazing. And because this is slow growth lumber, as in it took about 300 years for these trees to grow, and then they were cut down around 1820, they have a lot of sap in them and they don't rot. And this will be here another 200 years, definitely a lot longer than I will, and it will still be expanding and contracting. There you go. There's the answer to your question. I'm Mark Holmes, and well, I guess I can get up off this floor. I'll see you soon.